activist who's a legal scholar and an attorney in private practice who also works for a local school district. We have Darlene, who's in the middle. Darlene Anderson is a parent, is a community activist, and many of you, if you were here early, has a wealth of knowledge about the school district and its policies and how they impact our children. And then next to Darlene is Greg King. Greg used to be our neighbor in the hood with us. He's moved out. We miss you, Greg. Greg operates a program called Always Knocking, where he works with youth. Sometimes people use the term at-risk youth, but my philosophy is all of our kids are at risk. So we would like to tell Greg, we thank you for working, come on in, y'all, for working with the youth and providing the youth a voice. So let me just give you a little background how we got here today. Back in February, when we celebrated our 3rd year anniversary, the issue of the pipeline, school to prison pipeline kept coming up, and we didn't have enough time to discuss that. So we decided to develop some time on our agenda today to bring people together, to invite the community to come out, and let's begin to engage in a discussion about this. You may hear the term used many different ways. The Children's Defense Fund used the term from cradle to the prison pipeline because they see there's so many disparities amongst children of color from the time that they're born to the time they leave and make their transition with their ancestors. So they just look at it from they look at it from a holistic perspective. Today we're going to look at it dealing with education. So a few ground rules. We would like to encourage each one of the speakers to spend about 10 minutes doing their opening remarks. Then, normally, if you all have been with us, we normally end around 12. Today we're going to go till about 12:30. So around noon, we're going to try to end the discussion in terms of the panel making their formal presentation. So then you as the audience can pose questions and everything. If people really like this dialogue, we may look at re-inviting them back to continue discussion, okay? Okay, so who would like to go first in terms of a panel member? So, okay, Greg is gonna go first, and Greg, you're gonna talk about impact on youth and community? Okay, go ahead. And Greg, you have to speak loud, you have a soft voice.
Number one, I want to thank y'all for inviting me to be a part of this panel discussion. And my one word that I'm going to surround it with is genocide. Mm-hmm. And system act will kill off an entire race of people at one time. Well, that is happening in our prison, in our school systems every day, from the womb to the tomb to the cradle to the grave. And then also, a long time ago, when the gangs became very, very known, you know, and they came up with the word blood and crip. A long time ago, blood it went for Black Liberation of Organized Defense. And then crip is Civilian Revolution Independent Party. And all of it stems around a form of genocide. And today, our school system, what I do is I work with a lot of kids that the system has labeled our kids the behavior kids. That's to cover up the word genocide in their form and in their fashion. I'm gonna make it real simple. A kid get in trouble, as Sister Darlene said earlier, he or she gets sent to a hearing. The hearing officer, and there's not many of them, and we're not there as color, sends the kid to a continuation school. That's the word they use, continuation. Because until that kid, he or she is 18, the department is still responsible for their education requirements. They get sent from a public school to the hearing office, from the hearing office to a continuation school, and that's that form of genocide that is alive and kicking right now today. Now, Sister Darlene is going to talk on it a little later, but once that kid is issued a citation, that does give them more rights to kick our kids straight out of school and refer to the penal system. And then one of the biggest things that against us is I did a survey 2 years straight with a lot of the adults that have criminal background that's 10 and 15 and 20 years of age. It's been 20 years since they've been in trouble. But the system has brainwashed we as a people that, well, I have a criminal background, so I can't get a job at the school, nor can I volunteer at the school because of my criminal background. But it's our responsibility to educate our people that You may have a criminal background record, but you still have the right to go to the school to check on your son or daughter.
That's right.
I'm saying that that's what's not happening. That's another piece to the form of genocide. Only time we hear from them is when that kid you need to come pick your kid up from school because he or she just got into a fight or something to that nature. And yes, it is allowed that kids are in kindergarten are already getting labeled to get kicked out of school before they even get to first grade because up under the behavior pattern. What's that section 48900? We really need to check into the 48900 section because that's what's putting the label on our kids even before they get to first grade. They warehousing our kids in school at the continuation school. The teachers that's there are not certified teachers. They are people who has been given the job and say, please be quiet, can you sit down here and do this assignment? What they're looking at that moment is just for the ADA so that they can get the money that the feds give those people for every kid that's in the seat. That is a form of genocide, people. And it's up to us to educate our parents, those who have the background that's 15 and 20 years old, to know that they still have the right to go to the school to check on their son or daughter and what's going on. That is so true. And if we allow, and I say we because I'm a part of it, although I'm doing the work that I do, I still have to include myself because that's the struggle and that's what I will continue to fight for. If we do not start reaching out to the community more, the next time we have a meeting, we want to always encourage everybody to at least bring one more person with you. Everybody can't come to the table and talk, but if we go down there in big numbers of bodies and just sit there, that's the most important thing there is. You know, and it's more to the genocide system, the way it's happening, than is to the table. That's why I raised the question earlier, the process of the kids that's going to be selected to go to the charter school. Yes, we want to close the achievement gap, but even in applying for that charter, to get that charter, there are some things that has to be not seen or not heard. So we must pay a close attention to even the process of the kids that will get selected to go to the charter school. I understand the charter school process, but the things that we don't understand, just like the comment I made just when I raised the question, and open up a whole other discussion. And yes, there is some kids that's already in the SCOE system, Sacramento County of Education, that will not get selected, even if they are in the South Sacramento area, the area that they're targeting first, that will not have the opportunity to go to that charter school. So that's something that we definitely need to pay close attention to, and that also fits in the form of the genocide process.
Oh, my turn.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Greg.
I'm going to talk kind of fast because I've learned to talk in 2 minutes. And
Okay.
2 minutes is important.
Okay.
And so, but I'm going to try to wrap it all up. But to fill in where he left off, the county pays $97,000 a year to house a juvenile inmate, and it's $243,000 for an adult inmate. So don't ever think that your child is not important to Sacramento County, because they have made their life's income on incarcerating our children. And so, and also, when you're looking at a juvenile who has went through the hearing, a lot of these times, these young women are taking their kids out of public school system simply because they don't want to face the district attorney. Because through truancy or behavioral issues, you continue to come to the school. But once you're documented with so many infractions, then they can hold the hearing, the SARB hearing on you. And as they will tell you, Sacramento County has had less than 100 SARBs this year probably less than 50. Really, because a parent will opt out. I don't think I want to go to jail, and I don't know any young woman who wants to be caught up with the district attorney. So because their child either has been moved so far away from the house that they can't get to school on time, or the family doesn't have a car and it's impacting the family. But quite frankly, the district has utilized the basic schools. Everybody wants to get their kid into the basic school. I think I want to have my child in the basic school too. It's one of the best programs in town. But quite frankly, they take the money from the other schools to put in the basic schools. Well, if that basic school is in your neighborhood and you happen to be a kid that's in poverty that wants to go to that school, you can't go. That's your own school. But they will send you to a school across town, and they are now talking about not providing any transportation. If they don't provide transportation, then it's on you, parents. get your child to school. When they start documenting you as having a truancy or a behavioral issue, they're gonna hold a hearing on you, and they're gonna still collect the ADA or the Title I dollars, simply because you're homeschooling your kid. That's your option. Your choice? Well, the choice is if you can't read and write yourself, I don't know what you're gonna do, because that kid's gonna be out and about. And idle time is the devil's workshop, and I think we all know that. But what's happened in Sacramento over time is criminal to African American kids, because African American kids don't have a choice. I was working with a young man, Charles Bernard. Charles got accused of being in a fight in October, as I was saying. And Charles said he wasn't in the fight and told me he was special ed. I met him on a night where Hiram Johnson was moving a massive amount of kids out of Hiram Johnson. Now, Hiram Johnson doesn't have a significant population of African American students. Why? Because they all got moved over here to the Accelerated Academy. Oh, fist bump, Accelerated Academy. What a great thing that after being in high school for all these time, you were not able to get your credits, although you passed the high school exam for KC and English and math and passed the algebra proficiency. That's the only way you can get into the Accelerated Academy, but you don't have your credits. So guess what? You're now going to attend, they're giving you this wonderful opportunity to still get your high school diploma, and you're going to sit on a computer and go 2 hours a day. Bump, bump. Guess what? 350 kids over there from sitting right next to the district office in an Accelerated Academy. They have one at the district, they have one over there behind American Legion, and they have several now. What is it? Well, that's just, I'm talking about the ones in Sac City, not including the other ones that are all through town. But Tony, your kid is enrolled in what kind of program? My sister, where's she at?
Capital City.
Capital City. They have 4 or 5 independent centers now for independent study. And a lot of our kids are in those independent study programs.
Right.
And so, you know, the deal is that we're not where they have to address the achievement gap issue. And why the district is in program improvement district-wide simply is because African American students are not making the achievement. We're right below the special needs kids. Guess what? Do they have a plan? I haven't seen one yet. Have they talked to the black community? I don't know that yet. Do they care? I don't believe so. Did they get rid of all the black staff in Sac City Unified School District? Hell yes, they did. They're not working. And so when we look at people who have to interact with our children, they're not there. And why don't they get to be there? Because education is a public oversight. When you pay your tax dollars, and I pay my tax dollars, we're paying for the use of the public tool system. When we're being denied, that's taxation without representation. What are we talking about here? But because we don't have a means of coming together, they have never worried about us, because we have never come together. Anytime we have been separated simply by, you know, their ability to say, I'll work with you, but I won't work with you. Okay, I'll work with you, but I can't work with her. So bring me, just bring me 2 or 3 people. Because quite frankly, you know, it takes one of us to get one of us, and I think we all know that. But our children are suffering. When they will take a kid and put him in jail, and he will spend 4 days in jail, and the DA refused to prosecute, and now this kid can't go back to jail. Tell me, what is that? Yeah, I mean, he can't go back to school. I'm just frustrated. Y'all are speaking.
It's genocide.
He's not in jail simply because I filed OAH. I filed the state complaint. And guess what? At the end of the road, the district said, well, we don't know if he had a valid IEP, so we really can't do anything. And the state said the same thing to me, too. So the federal government said your IEP is valid, no matter when it was last implemented. And the state of California says, well, we really don't know that it was valid. Now you have to go back and meet with the district. I said, you mean you put the kid in jail twice, almost twice. You gave him a $20,000 bail for a felony because it was a terrorist threat. FU is a terrorist threat. And so it's just not this one kid. It's hundreds and thousands of black kids. They said, well, they're not here. Guess what? The DA just happened to create a committee called IMAX. Now IMAX is giving regional opportunity training programs to other states, and our kids are going, shipping them out of state. So when you see them mamas coming out of out of the juvenile court and they broke down because they can't get to their babies in another state, then they can't say nothing. Who are they going to tell? Who are you going to tell? You can't tell anyone this because you don't have access to your child anymore. And what is the child going to do? A lot of our kids are committing suicides in other states. Do we know? I don't believe so. It is crazy when you are considered less than a human being in the state of California. When the capital is doing it, then the whole state is doing it. And when the impact of the failure rate of African Americans for the state of California is crazy, we need to figure out how we come together, how we have this conversation in a more greater way so people know. Martin Luther King, he trained people. He was a dangerous man because he could train them and they could come together and they could work as one unit. Now, they never had to worry about that happening again because we were always waiting for a leader. We don't need anyone to lead. We need to stand up. Every one of us are taxpayers and we have a right, but we have to have this conversation publicly.
Hold on. Let's Dale.
Just one thing, just add to it. How many of you attended the community forum with the General 3 weeks ago? This is what she shared with us. She said they're using the 3rd grade reading level. If your child is in the 3rd grade and he or she is not at a 3rd grade reading level at the end of the year, those are the stats that they're using to determine how many prisons they're going to build in the future.
Yes, sir. Wow.
She just told us that 3 weeks ago from our Attorney General. Pipeline to prison. Cradle to the grave, to the womb, to the tomb.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to have Dale, and he's going to speak on, he's going to deal with legal and political impact and some data.
Thank you. Did everybody pick up a copy of the handout on the table? I think initially we need to establish a couple of facts, some parameters that, first of all, this discussion we will not be able to cover every aspect that we need to cover of this discussion in this hour. This is an ongoing discussion. And I think, speaking from a legal standpoint, we have to consider the discussion in the legal terminology of the totality of the circumstances. The totality of the circumstances takes us outside the field of education and requires that we look at it as our overall circumstances here in America. Okay? And if we understand that we started off here and we remember that we were not brought here as equals.
That's right.
And we have never been viewed as equals. And so our constant struggle is a struggle for freedom and equality. So with that in mind, if we understand that the educational system is just a microcosm of our overall life circumstances, then that'll help us be able to correctly analyze this thing under the totality of the circumstances. Having said that, locating the school-to-prison pipeline gives us the elements of the school-to-prison pipeline phenomenon. If you look, it says we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements that make up this school-to-prison pipeline. One is failing public schools. It says that inadequate resources have led to overcrowded classrooms, lack of qualified teachers, insufficient funding for extras such as counselors, special education services, and even textbooks. So with failing public schools, that is one of our elements that leads us from the school to the prison pipeline. Another element is zero tolerance in other school disciplines. The zero tolerance policies automatically impose severe punishment regardless of circumstances. Now, I'm going to deviate just a little bit just to give you some practical experience that I've observed working for the Sacramento City Unified School District for 21 years. As a maintenance electrician for the Sacramento City Unified School District, it's my responsibility to supply to all the facilities electrical services to make sure their lights are on and their electrical equipment works. So as a result of that, I get to go to all of the facilities in the Sacramento City Unified School District. One of the things that concerned me from the beginning was going to the different schools and seeing the African American males being put outside of the classroom. So what happens here? First of all, for classroom management, a lot of these teachers feel that they have to sit the child outside the classroom in order to manage the rest of the students in the classroom, right? Now, this causes two problems for our African American males. One is, obviously the child is having some socialization problems because he will not function within the classroom environment in the teacher's opinion. The second problem that we have is, along with the socialization issue, now we have an educational problem because the child is sitting outside of the classroom, which means the child is missing valuable classroom instruction. So along with the socialization deficiency, we also have an educational deficiency, which exacerbates the problem with our African American child. This is an ongoing, I've seen this for the last 21 years. And I just saw another example of it just 2 weeks ago at a school where an African American male was sitting outside of the classroom crying. Zero tolerance in other school discipline. Policing school hallways. Many under-resourced schools become pipeline gateways by placing increased reliance on police rather than teachers. Sacramento City Unified School District has a $1.4 million contract with the Sacramento Police Department.
Just this year, an extension.
It's a 3-year contract with 2% pay raises automatically written into the contract every year. That's interesting in light of the fact that the Sacramento City Unified School District Superintendent, Jonathan Raymond, has asked all of the other employees within the district to take a 5% pay cut for the coming year. Disciplinary alternative schools. In some jurisdictions, students who have been suspended or expelled have no right to an education at all. We have a case here in California that was just settled, where children were committed to a juvenile detention center in Southern California, and once they got there, they got no education at all, even though they were within the age to be educated here in California. And finally, court involvement in the juvenile detention. Youth who become involved in the juvenile justice system are often denied procedural protections in courts. In one state, up to 80% of court-involved children do not have lawyers. Students who commit minor offenses may end up in secure detention if they violate boilerplate probation conditions prohibiting them from activities like missing school or disobeying teachers. One of the final elements in this particular discussion coming from the American Civil Liberties Union. So, we as concerned community citizens, we have to do an analysis. We have to do our research, and we have to do an analysis of the circumstances that have created this condition called the school-to-prison pipeline. And then we have to, after we do our analysis, then we have to come forward with what our recommendations are for what we believe will solve our problem. Because that's the only way it's going to work. We have to do the work, we have to propose the solutions, and then we have to be prepared to carry them out on a foot soldier, hit the ground, running basis. Thank you.
I want to feel where, in 1998 or 99, Sacramento City Unified School District was given in some kind of negotiation with the Office of Civil Rights, because they had so many African American kids that were placed in discipline issues. And the Office of Civil Rights negotiated this out of it by putting some money into the schools and doing this whole tolerance review thing. And then they made a couple of, they tracked this information, and I had the complaint. I'm not sure exactly where it is right now, but I know that we went through the complaint process. And then there were some agreements that they were not going to, you know, discipline African American students as much. But what they did is they changed things around, and they started using in-house suspension. And so when their kid is in-house, then they can still claim the ADA, and they don't have to report the discipline issues to anyone. It's basically their business. And so because of whatever legal requirements, there should be legal requirements that they're reporting the discipline issues out to the public. Because the public has a right to know which subgroups are being mostly affected by the labeled or perceived, you know, discipline issues. But we're not getting that information. So I think that we need to request of the board what kind of discipline issues. I made a comment at the last board meeting, and Donald Terry was very incensed behind my comment about the SAR and the number of kids who went through SARs. And he said that the district spends lots of money on those SAR hearings. I guarantee they probably do. I don't know which community partner's getting that money, but it's not none of y'all. And so the deal is that if they're using community people and they're paying a lot of money to in-house our kids, which recently, over the summer, which nobody was paying attention to, the Lynx crew, Panacea, and the Truancy Center all were placed on district property where you're paying your taxes. So now they don't even have to go outside the district. They can just snatch your kid and put them in a program, and they're no longer receiving an educational officer. Isn't that amazing? So, you know, if they, you know, they're not adjusting the achievement gap, because when you're in those kind of programs, the district's not going to be required to even talk about the achievement of those kids and those juvenile justice programs.
Okay, hold on.
And so, you know, there are so many things that we don't know, and that more than what I probably could tell you in this little short time, because it all comes from their unwillingness to include us as a part of the process, to have some accountability. They want the money. They want the Title I dollars. They just have a problem. They say, well, you know, we need tolerance. Tolerance was before Barack Obama was elected. Tolerance was before Kamala Harris was appointed the United States Attorney General in the state of California. Tolerance was before, you know, we have a black person that's over the whole United States, that's African American, over the Justice Department. And why are we still talking about tolerance? Tolerance is because we are talking about taxpayers, public trust funds, where we trust that the people who take these dollars are willing to educate all children. But they still want more tolerance. They want more time to what? Incarcerate our kids? I don't think so. I think it's time for us to stand up.
Thank you. Greg, do you have any final words before we go into question and answer for the from the audience?
Yes, my final words are it's definitely time for us to get involved, because the more of us get involved, like I said, we can find somebody to speak for us, but we definitely need more bodies and seats.
That's right, yeah.
You know, most recently open in the Twin Rivers district, for example. I know we Sac City, but we also have kids in Twin Rivers. They had meetings after meetings after meetings. People was begging people to come to the meetings. But man, if we could have just got more people just come to occupy the seats, you didn't have to say nothing. We'll have somebody speak for us, and within our own. But we got to occupy the seats at these meetings. We got to be there in bodies. We need bodies.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we're going to, Dale, did you have any parting words? Okay, so what we're going to try to do is, I'm going to ask Dale to repeat, because at the end of your presentation, you provided some solutions. Can you repeat those solutions? Someone's taking the solutions down? Someone's writing the solutions down?
It's being recorded.
It's being recorded? Okay, I wasn't sure for that.
Well, basically, I just said that we have to analyze our condition under the totality of the circumstances.
Speak up, Dick.
Okay. we have to analyze our condition under the totality of the circumstances. And by that I mean this. If we just look at education, when Brown versus the Board of Education was litigated, the purpose was to attack the oppression, the discrimination, and the second-class citizenship from an educational standpoint. However, the effect was supposed to ripple throughout our community to cover not just education, but employment, business. It was supposed to cover the entire inequality that we faced here in America. So if we understand that, and we start from the aspect that as oppressed, colonized people, that education is just one of the aspects of our liberation that we have to fight. So under that analysis, we have to look at our struggle with the educational system and our struggle for freedom ever since we've been here in America. And we have to research some of the work that's been done. Like Dr. Derek Bell wrote this book here, Silent Covenants, where as a legal professor from New York, he's analyzed the impact of Brown versus Board of Education on our legal justice system and us as people. And then we also have, and then if we look at it from a legal aspect, if we look at like Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, which also analyzes the fact that nowadays we have more children, we have more people incarcerated in the criminal justice system than we had enslaved in 1850. That's significant.
That is significant.
We got more people incarcerated now than were enslaved during slavery times. So this is all information we need to garner that we need to research first. We need to do our research. And then we need to do an analysis of what our problems are. And after we do the analysis, then we have to do the work collectively. Because the only people who are going to solve our problem is us.
That's right.
You know? See, one thing I learned, and I'm going to be short with this, but one thing I learned in prison, that in order to overcome the slave, oppressive, victim mentality, you have to first assume the responsibility for your condition. You know, I had a problem with this initially because I went to prison as an innocent man. So my song was, I didn't do it, I don't belong here. But as long as I did that, I was waiting on somebody else to come along and help me with my situation. Once I assumed the responsibility for being in prison, innocent though I was, that empowered me to take the steps to secure my own freedom. And that's the same thing we have to do. We have to quit looking at ourselves as victims of this system.
That's right.
And assume the responsibility, because we've had people to do the work for us already. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Right. A lot of this analysis has already been done.
That's right.
We just have to pick up the baton where it was dropped and carry it further. So we have to analyze, where did we get stuck?
Right.
Where did we get stuck? Which one of our leaders' demise or destruction stopped our progression toward our own security? And once we determine that, then we can find out where that is, start from there, and do that work forward for today.
Okay, we had some hands go up. Donna, then David.
I wanted to put this question to the panel, and possibly Dale could answer this. Would it behoove us to have two questions? Behoove us to speak with the Attorney General? and other judges and whatever in the community, like we've done for Clean Slate Day?
Can you first repeat the question?
Sure. Donna's asked.
Would it behoove us to meet with the Attorney General to discuss what the panel has discussed today? Because we have done that in other cities, and I don't know about here, for clean slate programs, to talk to the judges, to talk to the Attorney General and tell them what our issues are, and see if we can come to a reasonable conclusion that it will benefit the school and will benefit our children, but more so our children. And also, is there a mechanism in place for tracking these students from kindergarten, wherever, that would let the community know these children that are being expelled from school? I wanted to know if there was a tracking system for that, because I would like to be a part of that and be a part of going to meet with the district attorney or the judges or whatever.
Okay, thank you. Who's gonna take a crack at that? All of you or one of you?
Okay, let me start it off. Second question first. Yes, there is a tracking mechanism where you can garner all of the information that you need about the problems that we're faced as African Americans in the school system. One of them is the EdSource, and then the CDE, the California Department of Education website, cde.ca.gov. You can go to those websites and type it and do a search on the information that you need.
The county office, the county superintendent is required to receive from all of the local districts, 12 or 13, report on the delinquents or the issues of juveniles in every area. Each district has a responsibility to report every infraction or everything to the county superintendent. And if we want that information, we have to go to the superintendent of the county. And because he does get that data, and you're not going to be able to find the data you're looking for at the CDE's website, because it's the county is responsible to ensure that all kids who are identified with these issues have some type of educational service. So it's the county superintendent for the data.
Is that also privacy, issue that
No.
would be on there? Okay.
No privacy issue. Now, the first question. I believe, in my own personal opinion, before we meet with anyone, I think we have to first, like I said, do our own work, because, historically, a lot of us have always been able to accurately identify the problem. I think where we've come up short is in our recommendations of what we think will solve the problem. So I think if we do our research and our analysis, and we come not only with what our research tells us is the problem, then we also should come with a proposed solution as well.
So could we select a committee today for those particular categories and begin to do the research so that we can, start working on this?
That could be one of the recommendations that comes out of this.
Uh-huh.
Okay, hold on. Did you want to speak to her question?
I do.
Okay, then after Darlene, then David.
At one time, when NCLB first came out and the African American Advisory Committee was really meeting, and Sweeney kind of like divided us all up and kind of conquered us by meeting with certain people. But we were on top because we knew exactly what was happening in our county as far as service providers and who they were. Right now, we really don't know who the service providers are, who's behind the Links Crew contract. Links Crew is a contract. It's someone who owns a contract who is providing services. And up until 2 years ago, they had never sent one African-American child to college. And so then they contracted with Allen Rowe, and I think we all admire the work that Allen Rowe has done in the community. But they sent 10 kids off to college. And what Allen didn't have is the financial backing to keep these 10 kids in college. So they all came back failures. But the real deal is that they were able to get into these historically black universities. And if they had substantial financial backing, they would have been able to stay. But because they had not, they came home. And so it was like a failure, and it represented a failure on what Ellen has had the ability to do. But Ellen has graduated thousands of African-American children here in the state of California, and they've come back with credentials. But for these 10, that the Links crew was trying to document that they could have some success in sending African-American kids off, it was a failure because it was a failure to plan. And it was they only gave Alan $10,000 to work with these kids, but they generate $97,000 for one youth. Why humiliate him and ask him? There's nothing that he's not willing to do. He sent a youth from Oakland whose brother had got shot down, who had a .93 GPA, off to Texas Southern, University, and that child graduated with the highest of honors. And so I know that our kids can do it. That's not the issue. The issue is, are we ensuring that they're all having an equal opportunity? And we're not. So we do need to know who are the providers of the contracts for behavioral issues, because it's under this Ed Code 482, what is it? Did I write it down? 48230? No, 48273, which allows a child with a behavioral issue to be put under the county office of education and to have, because this puts the kid in special ed. And we all know special ed. I tell you, special ed is great. My son graduated from Kennedy High School with a 2.98. He was special ed all the way. He passed the high school exam for English, math, or 3.98. But it didn't really matter because he passed all his subjects. He got his paper, and he's still in the university right now. But he had a disability. He had a processing disorder. And let's not pretend it wasn't a real disability. But because special ed, he was able to graduate. He was the only kid in the district to graduate at grade level. The only one in special ed in 2004. So what is this telling you? That not even the white kids are graduating at grade level. And so, but my son was able to, because I know what the federal regs say. But if you're a parent and you don't know what the federal regs say, then they'll have a hearing on you. But if you're special ed, you don't have to go through that hearing. You have the right to stay in public school with the support. But the district doesn't even have special education services anymore. They've gotten rid of all their teachers, their highly qualified teachers, simply because they have to pay them too much. And so they have new teachers. And actually the law allows them to put an intern in a program over your child for RSP, and the teacher doesn't even have to have a teaching credential at all. So what are we saying? You have a special needs student in a program where the teacher doesn't have a teaching credential, and it's allowed by law. So you can't monitor the success. You can't measure anything because nobody even knows how to target the content standards to work towards. But if you don't know as a parent what's happening, you can't do anything. And when you challenge it, the teacher goes on stress leave. That's what happens.
Next group of speakers, David Luce, Suzanne Brooks, and then DeRusso. And then Carl.
My question is for the panel or for anyone in the audience that can answer. You made mention of Ed Code 48900. Under Ed Code 48900, Section B, it says that the superintendent of the school district or principal may use his or her discretion to provide alternatives to suspension or expulsion, including but not limited to counseling and anger management program for people subject to discipline under this section. I say right there, that is an opportunity where we can stop and get this all in the bud right here, right now, by going to every superintendent and encouraging them in the most friendly manner. That they have it within their right and within their power to stop the expulsion and expansion pipeline.
But they've cut
Hold on.
But my point is, the superintendents have the discretion. So forget all these hearings, forget all this other crap that they're doing. The superintendent can stop it. A single principal can stop and provide an alternative. Now, I don't know about any other advocacy or any other research or actions, but I think that should be one of the action items that we take away as exploring what actual power or opportunity 48,900 Section B actually gives the community to deal with this issue.
Okay, hold on. David, were you posing it to a panel as well as the audience?
Anybody who can answer that question.
Okay, so who would like to address that question that hasn't spoke? Okay, Yvonne, and then I saw a superintendent here.
I'm Yvonne Wilson, and I'm the founder of Disciples that we have built for certain children in public schools and enrollment and suspension. Superintendent,
Can you repeat that?
She just
the
defined the
Disciples is a nonprofit that I started, and it's a dedicated individual serving children in public schools to limit expulsions and suspension. To address your issue, more than half the time, the superintendent has no knowledge the child is even being expelled. It stops with the principal. That's where you have to attack.
You can't, a principal can't expel a student.
Yes, they can.
They can recommend it, and it's approved by the board, correct? It's
But-
approved by the board.
But they never get.
Okay, hold on. Let her finish.
The principal makes the recommendation, but for that information to even make its way to the superintendent, rarely doesn't ever go there. You have to nip it in the bud.
But the superintendent isn't, and we have a superintendent
Yes,
in the room.
okay.
But my understanding is that the superintendent is the chief administrative officer, and everything in that board packet, the superintendent knows about. And if
Supposed to.
the superintendent has a policy, if the superintendent were to institute a policy in the district, that said, we are not going, these are the priorities that we're going to utilize in terms of dealing with discipline and expulsion to the bottom of the list, then that's going to drive the staff recommendations and everything else. Just because the principal makes a recommendation that you expel someone doesn't mean that it's rubber stamped all the way up the
More
chain.
than likely it is, though.
I see him.
That's not like a problem
Hold
with
on.
the superintendent.
Okay, so I know we have Ramona, who's, to my understanding, is a sitting superintendent, then we have Hazel, who's been a past superintendent. So hopefully between the two of them, they can clarify that whole issue. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I
Ramona,
really
then
want-
Hazel on that.
Thank you. Really briefly, I want to address what Dale talked about our students in the hallway, and then what Darlene talked about regarding alternatives to suspension, which goes back to what David was talking about.
Okay.
Our students are definitely in the hallway. And so, there's a referral process that we need to be aware of, that our students are referred out of the classroom. So I would suggest that any tracking process really go back to referrals. When I was a principal here at Red Heart, here in Sacramento, I broke down the referrals by teacher name, by subgroup, and put it in front of the teachers and said, what are we going to do about this? I agree with the sister in the back. It starts with the principal. And so once that principal starts with the referrals and really stops having our kids sent out, that's major. Number two, what Darlene talked about with regard to the 1998 action. We have principals just sitting our kids in the office. Who's learning in the office? What are you learning? And so, it starts again with looking at referrals, looking at, if we're looking at alternatives to suspension, then education should continue. If we're looking at alternatives to suspension, it should not be the student sits in the office, or the student sits, there's a book called Blackboard, I encourage all of you to read it. The student sits in the basement with a classified staff member, learns nothing, but talk about the prison pipeline. It starts in the referral classroom, in the discipline alternative. It starts when students are sitting in the hallway. That's where it all starts. Our principals and our teachers are the imperative piece with regard to this. When it comes to policy, what I want to say about, and I'm not in my official capacity today, but I will say that in Vallejo, I have already met with the African American community. They've said, we will not tolerate anything. You need anything, you call us. I met with the gay lesbian community. You need anything, you call us. The Latino community and the Filipino community. I'm saying in Sacramento, what's happening with our kids is our fault until we stand up. It is our fault.
Hold on, Darlene. Okay, Hazel, we have a whole line of people, so people are gonna have to respect how I move through this. Ms. Hazel?
Okay, I just want to tell you what the process is, and it usually starts in the classroom. That's where the referral is made. Then it goes to the principal. And many times, principals are reluctant to overturn whatever the teacher says. So it stays with the principal, then it goes to the superintendent. They have a closed session where it's presented to the entire board. And what comes out on consent calendar is what happens with our students, and that is the process.
Okay.
And by that time, it's too late.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so, David, did we answer your question, or
No.
you didn't answer our question? Okay, because, hold on, please, because I have like 3 other people who would like to pose questions that's probably not even related to this. So I just want to make sure, can we move off of this so we can get the other
Okay,
people?
so
Daryl?
One last statement.
Okay.
Because I think what I've heard so far is right on track with the issues figured. As a high school principal, middle school principal, for me, first day of school, you see the kids start lining up in the vice principal's office because of those referrals
Right.
that we're talking about. What I've always found consistently is that there's no system of discipline in the whole school.
Right.
And what I mean is, teachers don't want any system because it promotes accountability.
That's right.
And the first thing as a principal that I have always done is I make a system that's accountable. If teacher's gonna write a referral, these are the rules in which you write a referral. If you don't write within those rules, you're not getting support from it. Once everybody, stakeholder understands their rules, then it's my job to make everybody uphold those rules. And what makes that possible for me is, of course, I print all the referrals. And I always find there are always 10 teachers who write them all.
That's right.
And so you devote then your resources on those 10 teachers.
Right.
And you start getting them out of there if you have to, as quickly as possible. In short order, you can straighten that whole thing up.
Yeah.
Because see, I always remember, if our DP is handling all the discipline, I gotta do all the work. So in my schools, it's not happening.
Okay.
Everybody is in charge of discipline on my campus. And that's the way it should work.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna bring this particular question to a close and go on to other people who have wanted to speak. So this is the lineup right now. I have Suzanne, Darusala, Carl, Mecca, and then Joyce. So Suzanne.
Okay, thank you to the panel and for this presentation. Couple of things I'd like you to just comment on. There are things that I've been pushing for a long time. One is, it's my opinion that we're not going to solve these problems on a school-by-school basis or principal by principal or teacher by teacher. I believe that the system of education in this state is so racist that until we have compliance reviews from K-12 through the university system, it's not going to get any better. We can't do the whole nation, but I believe we could do California. And I'd like to know what you think about that. Some of the programs I'm working with, I'm a tutor in No Child Left Behind, which is also a track to prison. I'm asked to tutor kids in 2, 3, and 4 grade levels at one time. I'm not paying the amount per student that I would get for tutoring a single student, which isn't much to begin with. I'm paid an additional $10 for students, up to 10 students, above whatever the initial fee is. That means I'm tutoring kids in 3 and 4 grade levels for an hour or an hour and a half. So obviously I can't work at all those levels. So that means most of the time I have some kids doing coloring. And on top of that, the tutors are expected to do most of the paperwork. So the first couple days and the last couple days and a couple days in the middle are shot because we're doing testing. I read the
Are you a supplement service provider?
I'm working for those companies.
That's why.
Most of those companies there are some that are owned by people of color. Most of them are white owned. Many of them own many such programs in multiple states, and they are making lots of money, and they tell you to dumb the kids down.
Okay, hold on. Can you can you boil your question down that you would like the panel or folks in the audience to respond to? Is it the compliance review? Is it the tutoring, or is it both, none?
What I'm getting at is that I see the problems in tutoring, the lack of the word racism in the Closing the Gap report. I see the major problem as racism in all of the educational institutions, no matter what they say, no matter how many college programs. Nobody is ever punished for what they do. Nobody is really accountable. And people like me, who are big advocates against racism, are kept out of the system, kept from credentials.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so people, I know everybody wants to talk, and but hold on, Ms. Darlene. But people are gonna have, when you pose your question, if you can pose your question concisely, and when you respond to the question, can you respond concisely? And hold on. And it's important that people listen. You need to listen, okay? And not always be, we have to listen. Okay, Darlene?
Okay. Her question is specific. Supplemental service providers in the state of California, anyone can go for a supplemental service provider contract. It's done through the state of California, but you have to meet all the criteria. Jerry Cummings was over the program, and he did support some African-American providers getting on the list. You should work for a provider that is more,
They're no better.
But then you can do it yourself. But all
Like the ones that I say.
Hold on.
The legal requirement for supplemental services is once you become a provider, you determine what services you do for the students that are under you. And the parent has total choice of who the provider they select by what the legislation says, supposedly. And so, yes, districts have implemented it different ways, but it's up for our community to go before the state board if we feel that it's not being implemented correctly to address the issues that you're saying.
What you're saying is what's on paper. I have tried to file reports to protect children, for children who are obviously dyslexic, couldn't see, couldn't hear. I am forbidden to tell a parent anything, and the programs are very hostile to anyone that speaks about the issue of racism that the child is experiencing.
Okay. Daryl, is your question related to what they're talking about?
My response is to Suzanne.
Okay, go ahead.
My response is as a former and present SES provider, Suzanne, that's not true. That's your statement about all of us are alike is not true. Dr. Mahone runs a quality program. Dr. Hayes Mahone, if you don't know about Dr. Mahone, that's fine. If you didn't realize our center runs a quality SES provider service, that's okay. But we are not all the same. We are not doing things for the same reason that other people are doing things. We are closing the achievement gap one kid at a time, and I can show you our track record and the work we're doing. I challenge you from other districts.
I do know your program, and I wasn't.
Suzanne, let him speak.
I need to clarify something.
No. Let him speak, and then we'll let you
I know that
clarify.
there are exceptions, but what I was getting at is that there are also black providers that are doing the services in the same kinds of programs. So that doesn't automatically make it better. That's what I was trying to say. I wasn't saying there's no provider, black or white, that's doing a good job, but I'm saying that I have experience with many and with many people working in many, and racism is a pervasive issue, and the dumbing down of the kids through tutoring is a pervasive
I
issue.
look forward to you working with us next year.
Okay.
I look forward to you working with us.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can we bring this, did you want to, I apologize.
To the question
Okay, tell me your name because I don't.
I'm Carl McLean.
Okay, hold on, Carl, there's hold on, Carl. Unfortunately, there's like 6 people ahead of you. Okay, I'm sorry. And I don't know your name, ma'am. Of course. Okay, thank you. So, thank you. Jerusalem, a new question?
Yes. Thank you, Tom, and thank you for the school board for this discussion. My question is in reference to some advice. Okay, I have 3 young men here who are either current victims or former victims of this dilemma that you've been discussing. What I'd like to know is what advice would you give each one of them to empower themselves and to deal with their victimization, and also if they're going to
Who's gonna take it?
Well,
Greg?
first off, I would, yes, I'm the CEO of Always Knocking Corporation. The first thing I'm gonna do is extend my services to each one of those gentlemen. We have some programs that's going on. One of them is called Junior Gentlemen, and I will be gladly to meet with y'all and discuss the issues so that we can get you in the direction that you want to go, and also talk about some of the issues, because one of the things that also hurt us is a lot of times we in denial about our own actions. Once we accept the responsibility of our own actions, it'll be easier for us to move forward in dealing with the issues that we really face. So that's what I definitely like to extend the services of my agency to you guys, and I'll give you my information, and we can move forward on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hold on, Carl, I'm sorry. Is it relationship to his question? Okay, go ahead.
My name is Carl McLean. I'm president of Black Advocates State Service. I'm also active with the African American Leadership Coalition. We meet every third Saturday. Last Saturday, usually every meeting. I would just say this, for you individually, get out of the mindset of being a victim. You need to be an overcomer to achieve things in this world. It's a fight. And don't think of yourself as a victim. Think of yourself as a person with power to overcome obstacles put in front of you. Don't let people make you victims. So I think
You speak to
it's
kids.
time.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Then Dale.
Since this is an ongoing discussion, I think that what we need to do after this meeting is to determine what resources we have in the room and see if we can communicate with each other what services that we provide under circumstances like that. So afterward, we need to get together and collaborate and talk with each other. And together we can work out something to help these young men.
Thank you. Anything else on Jerusalem's question? Okay, Leroy?
I just want to follow on Dale. I think what else is important is that once you all have the discussion, that you have all that information where it can be handed out to others that didn't attend those meetings. I mean, names, addresses, and a little focal point, a little agenda piece in there of what happened with that discussion, because we just have 3 right here, but we have tons of the community. So I think that's a great idea.
Okay, thank you. Ms.
Sullivan.
Quincy, okay,
This has to do with their.
okay.
I'm involved with class action suit against juvenile hall for the abuse that they put. So, anybody who's been abused, who's been abused, or even witnessed anybody else being abused at juvenile hall, I have information here that where you can call attorneys. We have 2 law offices, not 2 attorneys, 2 law offices fighting this. And if you don't even witness, anybody who witnessed someone abused, you can get financial compensation. We've been involved with this for 1.5 years, and by December, it'll be coming to a close. So I have some little handouts that I can sit off the table if anybody's interested. Or know anybody who was abused at juvenile hall, you can get financial compensation.
Thank you. Okay, we're getting to Mecca.
Good afternoon. I actually was interested in addressing what the gentleman in the red shirt was talking about earlier.
Okay.
I want to go back to that. Mecca's my nickname, but a lot of people know me as Amelia. I think one of the issues that we really need to focus on is that there's people in the schools, such as myself, I'm an instructional aide at elementary school. We are in the trenches, so we actually see up close and personal what is happening to the kids. The policies and procedures that are on paper and on the website is not what's going on in the schools. The teachers, the staff, the administrators are basically acting with impunity within a lot of the community schools. The policies and procedures are not actually being followed to the letter like we would think that they would be. And because of that, when we try to advocate or try to solve the problem, you can't go back to the policies and procedures and say, oh, this is what you all should be doing, because that's not actually what's happening. For instance, are young African-American males who are getting sent out of the classroom, or children that are getting sent out of the classroom, there's not referral being written. 95% of the time, these kids are not being written up. There is no paper trail. The teacher says, get out, and they go out. I was just talking to a couple of my kids who are third graders. They are the statistic. These beautiful African-American boys that I see every day, that I work with every day. I had to tell them, they're out of the classroom, out of the class, in the pod, just goofing off and playing around, getting themselves more entrenched in the problem. I had to say to them, I see you more out of class than I see you in the classroom. This is not okay. What we absolutely have to do is find out a way that when they're put out of the classroom, because guess what, when we go up against the teachers and we say to them, y'all really shouldn't be putting the kids out of the classroom, they need to be in the classroom so they can get an education, we're gonna say, well, your kids are a problem. We're not gonna want them in the classroom. When they get put out of the classroom, we need to have some kind of way that some kind of staff that's in place can make sure that those kids still get their education. Because what happens is the more they get put out of the classroom, then they finally make a decision, and one of the boys that I'm talking about, he recently got put on what they call a half-day schedule. So he's expelled, which means that 8 to 12 he can be at school, and then the rest of the day he's not there. This is something that's common for our kids. Now this happened instantaneously. I didn't even know about it. It happened one day, and the next day he was on half-day schedule. So the process, the policy, and procedures don't get deceived. It's a sleight of hand. We in the trenches, we know that all of that is not necessarily what it appears to be. So we need to be careful about that. We need to, when we present our plan, we have to understand that. And be ready to say, we need people right there in the schools to take the kids and make sure that they get the education they deserve.
Thank you.
Put out of the classroom.
Okay, thank you. I have a list to get down. Okay, Joyce, and then this Carl from Bass. From Bass, right?
Yes.
Okay, Joyce, then Carl from Bass.
Okay, I just wanted to say, as I said from the panel, two things really came out in action more from Mr. DeLuce. Discretion and zero tolerance are the nails that they're using to put into the coffin. And we have to take those away. Those are the foundational basis that they're using. And if you take away the foundation, the building's gonna fall. And it outrages me to hear that they're gonna sit up here and use the literacy test to determine who goes to prison. Yes, you're right. Race, no matter what aspect you come from, is a determinant factor. Okay, we have to establish that. And I did do a study while I was in school on zero tolerance. It is a policy that is used way beyond the scope of its intent. I won't go into that now, but trust me, it is. So I'm just saying to the panel, as a solution, I think that we need to attack discretion and zero tolerance. When I did my study, and I think I heard Ms. Darlene allude to this, willful disobedience is an umbrella for anything. You know, so, that's just gotta go. But this right here, the literacy thing, that just outrages me. How dare they base building of prisons on what someone does in the 3rd grade? Come on now. You know, but I'm saying, it's new to me. My major was government, so this education thing, I came up on it by accident. And it enrages me. I just cannot believe what they do. I'm from the old South. When Dr. Coben talked about that, that was me was talking about. They told me I couldn't be anything but something to help somebody else. You know, I wasn't supposed to do anything, and certainly not do what I've done in life, but you know, that aside, I just say to the panel, and I do want to offer, I love research. So if you need me to research anything, my back is really bad and I've got to go pretty soon, but let me know, they can contact me. I will help with any research you need. But just to the panel, what do you do with this outrage?
Okay.
Zero tolerance and discretion.
Okay, who's gonna take, Darlene? Go take it.
The zero tolerance, the district just went through an anti-bullying policy where they didn't really get anybody's input, but they got their own. We had 3 people from the DAC that actually, had input, and I guess
District Advisory Committee.
Yeah, and a few other people. But then they presented it to the board because they're going for zero tolerance, and they want to include in there bullying, cyberbullying. So if you know, Sacramento has a vibrant cyber program. I think we're California, so we're top of the nation. We know what everybody's doing at every time, anytime, and probably even now got reporters on. But the real deal is that zero tolerance, they want to be able to get these kids for hate crime on the internet. So if the way our kids use language, let's get real. Let's get real. If they are going to be incarcerated. And so we need to understand how this is going to affect our community, because it's just moving more of our kids into the criminal justice system. And as everyone has said, we do have to look at site by site, the failure rate, what's causing the failure at that school. If the kids are spending more time out of class than in class, then we need to know why they're spending that time out. You cannot expect people who do not value who you are to ensure that you're getting the service that they are hired for. They like their retirement, they like their vacation, they like their paycheck, but they don't want to serve all kids. The deal is that we have to have some accountability here. They are hired to do a public job, and we need to ensure that they're doing it. If they're not doing it, then we need to ask the superintendent to hire people who will do it. We don't have to ask anybody anything except for hold people accountable for the public use of the funds that they're getting. We can't beg them to love our children. We don't have to. They're not entitled to the public dollars no more than you or I if they can't provide an education for all kids. So it's about accountability. And we do have to look, as David said, individually at the principals, hold them accountable for the student achievement of all schools. If they're pervasive in their failure for targeted subgroups or moving kids out of their program, we need to look at that too. And if they can't do the job, let that be one of the reasons why the superintendent needs to remove the principal, i.e. or staff. That's the bottom line. These are federal and state dollars. They need to be accountable to the issues.
Okay, thank you. Any other panel member would like to address that before we go to someone has a hand up around that question?
Question over here.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Hold on, Henry. Ma'am, I don't know your name. Is your question or comment?
It's related to
Okay,
that,
thank you.
yes.
What's your name?
My name is Regina Brown Wilson.
Thank you.
And I will be with the State Board of Education. I'm not here in that capacity, but I'll be with the State Board for another 2 weeks, and then I'll be free to be a mom. But one of the things, Darlene, that you're talking about, and I think this kind of talks to what David is saying, we have to look at the regulations and the policies. I think we have to know them, because if you don't know the rules, then you can't play the game.
That's right.
And being at the state board has given me a huge eye-opening experience of being able to look at the regulation process, the policy process. So as you're talking about what needs to happen or what needs to come from this group, I think that it definitely would behoove you to get the policies from the County Office of Education on how they deal with whatever, as it relates to African American students or just in general, what their policies are, and to dissect that and look at if there's some that are unfair, bring it to their attention, because they can always put anything on their agenda, and then you can actually make change happen. You can do the same thing from looking at the school districts in the area and picking out the school districts that have high numbers of African American students, and that way you attack and penetrate the places in the areas where you're trying to, touch these African American students versus trying to look at this as this big, huge, massive overtaking. There's no way to do it, but you can definitely chunk it off by looking at the county office and then looking into those local district areas.
Thank you very much. And Tony, was your question related to this discussion?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
on this. I think that what I've learned from being unemployed and being a person that has had to accept assistance, that we really have to deal with the fact that anytime somebody's on public assistance and their child is not in school, they lose their aid. I don't think people really get it. I don't think you really get the pressure of all the different agencies coming upon one person who has 3 or 4 children, who could be doing anything at any time and has no control. People documenting. You have to document every 3 months. You can't imagine what that's like. And at first I just thought, well, why would God have me unemployed for 2 years? I have not any sense of what parents have to go through. And our insensitivity to the fact that they have to comply or lose all monies at any time. And I want to say this because we live in a world with two different things going on, two different standards. And because you look one way, people perceive something else. And I think, I know how to advocate for myself. When the welfare said you have to go to Jump Club, I said, I need to have a class to pass the seabeds. I could advocate, I could manipulate, I have intelligence, I could weave through everything that they said was a barrier or an obstacle. But most parents do not have that. They do not have that. And when these kids start 16 and 17, they're wanting to date, not come home, they lose all aid. I don't think people really get it. And I've had to take jobs that were not, I've been fired from 3 jobs if I stay because I've worked out of class. So when you work out of class and you have a certain education, you are very threatening. So what I'm beginning to see as the women that are in transition from prison and the children, they still have the same obstacles. Because people look up one day and they look at you and say, I'm tired of seeing you. I don't want to have you here. You're black. I'm tired of hearing you. I'm tired of hearing you express yourself. You're quick. I saw 3 women in 3 months get black African mothers who were trying to position themselves to get their children back, were kicked out of the program. And I come back, well, what did they do? They didn't do anything. They just got tired of it. So then there's little Anthony at the school that I was working with just now. He's in a class, a Hmong teacher. She does not like him. He's probably the brightest of all the students. Every day he doesn't get why he has to be sent out of the classroom. But it's still the same intolerance. People can decide they don't want to see you.
That's right.
I don't think anybody fears that. If you have a state job, you have a city job, you have a county job, at least you have some advocacy for you. But we're in a situation where our children could just be showing up and people get tired. I'm tired of you. And I just, when we're thinking about this, you have 32 hours mandated to volunteer every week in Omaha. You're doing it somewhere, someplace. 32 hours, plus job search, plus, and people will say, well, why aren't the parents at school? They're mandated to do this stuff. I have been mandated to do it. So I'm not just talking about something that somebody's told me. I know that in order to get my aid, I have to do that. So I want to put you in a place of survival when you're thinking about the parents, and think about 10 different agencies all in your business, documented every day, every 3 months. Let's talk about the real deal so we start really having more empathy for families.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. Okay, hold on, Carl. Henry, was your comment okay? Was your comment related?
I think it's different.
Okay. Now you, Carl. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be as fair as possible. Please bear with me.
I really love being here, the energy and the intelligence in the room, panel, everybody here who has a wealth of experience and knowledge about the system. I'm struggling to keep my blood pressure down because these issues, you gotta kind of hold yourself down because of all of these issues. I do think that education is the new civil rights of our day. And, in deference to all of the knowledge that's in the room about the specifics within the bureaucracy of education, there's only 2 types of power in the United States. And I mean, we really got to just acknowledge the circumstance we're in. People only respect power. And it's organized money or organized people.
That's right.
And unless because we ain't got organized money.
But we do. We don't know that, though.
Well, I don't have organized money.
Well, we do know.
Unless we decide to get together and organize as people, if we do that, we can make a change. And my whole approach is very simple. We have school board elected officials who either hire superintendents that carry out policies that address our issues. If they don't do it, they fire them. And if the elected officials don't do it, we get out, we vote, we walk precincts, we target them, and we get them out of office and get somebody to represent us. And you know, forget all the monkeying around, because they can change the rules. We do one thing, they change it to something else. No, there's no excuse. We just simply organize around power, get people elected or not elected, and then we make changes. Instead of going and making a moral argument about what is right, because that's got us nowhere. I am active also, I support the AALC, the African American Leadership Coalition, and the whole point of the AALC is to all of the different institutions who are out here trying to deal with issues in our community to come together and let's create power. Let's create a mass group of people to make change in our community. Otherwise, we'll be having these meetings, our kids will be having these meetings.
And yet, thank you very much. Okay. Ms. Quintella, did you have anything else to say? Okay. Henry, I'm getting down the list. I'm so good. Henry, did you have anything?
Yes, ma'am, really quickly. I guess I think the recommendation to the Black Pearl School Board, is it possible that we could request from all of these superintendents a report on all of these issues that are concerning to us? Now, maybe it's already out there in Catalan, maybe just need to, you know, put all the data in one monthly report so we can see and track what's going on. That's one, and then, you know, maybe, again, Black Pearl School Board might refer some of this to the grand jury so they could do some of the footwork and, you know, bring some of these folks in and ask a question. And my recommendation is when you write that letter to the grand jury, which I think they would do anyway, when I've seen them come over and investigate issues at the jail, they don't just talk to, you know, commanders and the sheriff and managers. They come down and actually pull, you know, individual officers into a room and say, you know, tell me what you see here day to day, and it's confidential, and you know, you kind of get a sense that you can express what's going on. So I think a well-written letter to the grand jury might help that strategy. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hold on. Any other folks before I go to Sherman? Steve.
I just want to make a comment on that. And, you know, that's great to take that avenue as well. But I think we need to cover all paths. And historically, that hasn't worked for us. It's diplomacy-wise, it's a great tool. But when it comes down to it, it is about power. And sometimes the power is just a show of persons. And so we need to look at that avenue as well. Personally, I would like to see us address it all and all at once. Because again, as you go back to that organized strength of power, and that has always worked for us historically.
Okay, thank you. Hold on, Darlene. Carl, then Darlene.
In terms of your question, Henry, the first part in regards to the district, the Black Pearl School Board has and will continue to make the request from the superintendent about that data. However, that's our first step, and I think we will follow up with making it formal or subpoena, whatever else process. But we've already initially made that request, and we will continue to do that with the superintendent and with the board. We do need people to work with the Black Parallel School Board, which I strongly recommend for those who are really interested in this subject, to touch base with us or just make note here that you're really interested in this particular subject of school to pipeline, because I think one of the things is that our people are really great at really getting excited about the issue, but the real work begins after this meeting. And so we really need people who will help us compile the data, pursue the administration, and do those kinds of things in terms of pilot. And the last thing is, it has to do with the grand jury. Initially, Sacramento Area Black Caucus submitted a request to the grand jury to investigate what was going on at the Sac City. And the new superintendent came in and says, look, everything is right. We're going through a whole lot of changes. You know, there's nothing nothing to see here. So, I think one of the things that we have to be, what I think we need to think about going forward is to refiling another grand jury, but taking it up a notch to the next level. But again, it takes a committed few people. It doesn't take mass. It takes a committed few people who are willing to live and die. Wake up thinking about this, go to bed thinking about this. Write this stuff. This is what makes real work versus coming together, expressing our views, and then we disappear. So for those who are really interested, like I said, in this subject, let me know, and then we'll work to pull together that team of people to do the research, to do the follow through, and those kinds of things, because there's a lot of issues in the district, and this is just one of many.
Okay, thank you. Darlene, then Ramona, and then we're going to be bringing it to a close.
I think that the contract for the police services in the district is $10 million. The additional $1.5 million came through just this past year, but it's a $10 million contract. And it's just our district alone. It's Sac City. It's not Elk Grove. It's not San Juan. It's not Twin Rivers. Every district has to pay some money for services to the police and additional money whenever an alarm goes off or whenever they have to make a call or whenever they have to come out and do something that's not contracted, which is picking up students. That's a different, that's their agreement. And, their agreement is safety, health and safety. But whose safety are we really talking about? And so I think that understanding what the policies are and how they've been implemented, we know the effect. The effect is what's happened to our community. It's been devastating. And we know that welfare was a devastating thing that when we migrated out here 30 or 40 years ago, welfare destroyed our families because it replaced the husband and the father in the families. And we had 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds having babies, and 15 years later, their children had some more babies, and 15 years later, their children had some more babies. But the real deal is that we did not pick up the baton and ensure that those children got an education. And so they are dysfunctional. I'm afraid of them too. When I go down the street, I'm afraid that one day somebody's gonna pop a cap, and it might be me. But these kids have no fear of safety. They have no thought of death. It is just something they've seen in TV. And I'll tell you how crazy it is. My son is in the spectrum. And he said, Mom, Urkel warped into another program. I said, what do you mean he warped? He said, well, he warped. He just went from one program. Look, he's over at this program now. And I said, see, this is how kids who don't have anyone to explain it to them perceive things. They really don't die. They just hop from one movie to the next. It's not a real thing for them. So I think we need to think about the way that media has played such a great impact in our communities, how it's also affecting our kids.
Okay, thank you. Ramona?
3 quick solutions I'd like to offer. One is that Title I, any district in program improvement, 10% of that funding has to be used for professional development. 10% of the Title I funding has to be used for professional development. I somewhat disagree with my young mentee, Onithia, over there. Our teachers should not be let off the hook. So they need to learn how to work with all of our children, particularly our African American males, and there's money for that. The second thing is, there's a Dr. Rita Cameron Wedding.
Sex thing.
You know Rita, who has a grant from the juvenile justice system. Obama's doing his work, right? He's putting money into this. She does free training on bias, on racial prejudice in our systems, and talks about how that first suspension is really leading our children on a pipeline of things. So what if we could, as various organizations, I'm AALC, Black Carroll School Board, Urban League, NAACP, could sponsor her to come to a setting, set up, superintendent name badges, and say, come. I'm dismayed that Harold is the only elected here. I'm glad that he is. I know he's a friend. But how dare folks not come and hear what we have to say on this issue? And then the last thing would be, I know that Regina is sitting on the state board next week, May 11th and 12th.
11th and 12th.
Is the African American Advisory is making their recommendations to the state of California about teacher training, about teacher effectiveness, around African American students? What if we were to pack the house and say, we want these recommendations to be accepted?
Yeah, we all need to.
And I'm willing to work that, you know.
Okay, sure. We would like to thank everyone for coming. Let's give the panel a big hand. I'm not taking any more comments from the audience. I'm just going to briefly remind people, Michelle Alexander will be in Sacramento May 25th at WCIC.